Employee experience is the new customer experience because your happy and engaged employees will provide the great experience for your customers. They will create more satisfied and the loyal customers, and definitely this will lead to the growth of your brand and the company. More engaged employees are willing to do or go beyond whatever they can do for the organizations. If as a learning and development professional, if you are contributing to their skill development, you are creating an impression in front of them that you care about them, and basically you are committed to them. Today in the Experience Business Podcast, I am Samir Kumar Saha, your host, is going to have a discussion around how the L&D leaders can improve the employee experience. Joining with me our guest who is driven and result oriented person in the learning and development and talent management with 18 plus years of experience, Anil Shantapuri. Anil is currently working as Director Learning and Development in Global IT Services Enterprise CGI. In 2016, Jombe actually recognized him as top 40 HR under 40. In 2012, he was recognized as Global Training and Organization Development Professional under 40. In the past, he has been Director Global Learning and Development in Altisource, and he also worked as Senior Manager in Talent Management in Western Union and Senior Manager Learning and Development in HCL. He is also an executive coach and takes a deep interest in the digital transformation and the new futuristic technologies like AI, blockchain, and IoT, etc. So let's welcome him and enjoy this conversation. Customers don't buy your product or services, they only buy feelings and the experiences. In a crowded market, you can differentiate and remain competitive only by making yourself an experienced business. But great experiences don't just happen, they require rethinking everything from business to marketing to sales to supply chain and operations and customer support. It requires true digital transformation. This is the Experience Business Podcast, and here is your host, Samir Kumar Sah. If you are a business leader and department head, join us in the conversation with other leaders and experts from various departments and domains who share stories, case studies, innovation strategies, and expert opinions for making experience your business. Good morning, Anil, and I welcome you in my show, the Experience Business Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm looking forward to having an engaging conversation.
I was introducing to my listeners about your achievements, 40 under 40, and and the things that you're doing in the learning space is just amazing.
Thank you. Thanks for that. So, it's an exciting time to be in this space, HR and learning, because we're at an interesting culmination of technology, human psychology,
Yes.
neuroscience, and fourth industrial revolution. So I think this is the best place to be, and my journey has been interesting. So actually, I'm a mechanical engineer by education, and started in IT industry like most people in India who are engineers. Spent a couple of years doing IT programming, IT consulting. Then finding my passion, moved into HR and learning and space. So I don't have any formal education in that space.
Mhm.
I think I was just following my passion, and when I look back, maybe I was, as Steve Jobs would say, stay hungry, stay foolish. So I was young and foolish to do this. Maybe I wouldn't do it now, but I'm happy to be where I am. It's exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, I think even for me, the transition has been totally different. I am a non-MBA guy, and
Mm-hmm.
when I talk to some people, when they ask questions like, "Does this A certification or degree or these things does it matter?" and I said, "Of course it matters, but it should not be the first thing. I mean, you can be from any career when you start your career. For example, education wise, yes, even I have been an engineer, right? Electronics and communication engineer, but I worked in a software company and now running a firm, not very big company, but at least I feel proud that I am consulting CXOs or VPs in digital
Yes.
transformation without having my formal education in the marketing or digital transformation. It's all the small projects that you take, try to engage with the people and try to have a mindset of solving their problem, and then somehow hustling your way out to find a small those little problems which we many times try to ignore, and then
True.
find opportunity in that and see the bigger picture down the line, right?
No, yeah, no, you're so true. I think what we need are problem solvers, creative
Yes.
problem solvers, and the way technology and the whole industry globalization has shifted over last couple of decades. Now we're in a very democratic place. So I mean, it doesn't matter what your background is, where you come from. Obviously, I'm not denying good education is useful. It is very much useful. Like uh, the skills I learned in my engineering, it's very interesting. One of my favorite topics in engineering was design engineering, and
Mm.
that's where you talk about how do you build, dams and trucks and buildings. And what's interesting is now I use the same design principles but for learning. So
Yeah.
education is important, and it's your ability to apply in a cross-functional area is that's very important, and that's the need of the hour, because with fourth industrial revolution and digital transformation, and again what's happening with COVID, things are accelerating, and the boundaries between industries are blurring so much. So it's our ability to solve problems, and we need problems. We need problem solvers, creative problem solvers. Like you are a great example of that. So yeah.
Yes. In one of the previous podcasts, I had a guest, Matt Satcher. He is a founder and a virtual CMO for the mid-sized companies. And his career transition has also happened from being a primary school English teacher to a
Hmm.
marketer. And
Yeah.
the same thing he was bringing about when I said, how did you transition? And what he's saying, the way you convince the people, it's language. English is a language. You have to convince people. It's a communication, the way you put communication. So he's
Hmm.
saying the core communication skills, and same thing I'm applying in also the marketing, because which is more about communication. So if you understand the human psychology. So,
Yeah.
and I was just like, yeah, I mean, this person is so right. I mean, no matter which background you come from, if you start looking at the human level, humans at the core are all the same, and it's just applying the principles from wherever you come from, and take that learning as a positive signal. That I think everything in our life, like whatever we learn, it's always somewhere other way, it's just will add value, or maybe we are ignoring, but it always helps.
That's true. And in fact, I really like the example of this virtual CMO, because language is all about messaging, marketing is
Hmm.
about messaging, targeted messaging. And it's interesting when you say most of what any of the fields we are doing now is more human centered, or should be more
Yes.
human centered. So marketing is more human centered. Entire UI UX digital space now, it's all about, why do I love iPhone? Because it's so UI UX. The moment I open the iPhone box, it's so easy, even a 4-year-old kid can unpack it. And then now learning, we're trying to make it human centered. There's so much work happening in product design space around design thinking, which is being more get to be more human centered. So I agree with you. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so now let's start with you. I would just love to know what are your roles and responsibilities currently in CGI as a director of learning and development?
Sure, thank you. So I work with CGI, which is one of the top 5 global IT and business consulting firms. We
Yes.
are headquartered based out of Canada. In Asia Pacific, we have a huge presence. We have a global delivery center. Through here, we actually serve all our clients globally, all the projects globally. So my primary responsibility is to create a culture of learning in the organization, work with leaders, managers, and members to ensure they have the right capabilities to serve our customers' current needs and future needs. So it encompasses their technical skills, leadership skills, language skills, any capability which we need to build from a graduate to a senior leader to
Mm-hmm.
ensure we serve our customer needs. And that's what I do primarily, kind of, set creating the right learning culture. And currently the times are interesting because digital transformation is driving things in a new way. And how do
Yes.
we keep our members, employees, future ready is one of the big challenges I'm currently dealing with.
Oh, okay. So as you're aware that I take the viewpoint that yes, every company should focus on basically providing the experience, and because people don't buy product and the services, they always buy experiences. So in the current scenario, when the people have the mobile phones, they explore a lot, they have so many choices, so it becomes difficult for them to create the differentiation when they want to make the choices, right? And
Hmm.
ultimately what plays a bigger role is like which company is providing the better experience.
Yeah.
And this experience is not only about offering the product or services, it is also about their perception about your brand, meaning at the human level, it could be maybe your employee also, like how you're treating your employee, okay,
Yes.
how your what is your culture within your organization. And digital transformation is the biggest, sorry, other way around, this customer experience need has created definitely the further demand for the digital transformation a lot, because customer putting at the center and the digital transformation initiative to support that, right? And one of the biggest element is definitely is employee, their satisfaction. Learning and development plays a very greater role in meeting the expectations not only of their employees but also the company's requirement, right? So it's always a win-win situation of both of them.
True.
But if you see in the but when I quickly gauge, right, the many companies they some at least the enterprises have their own learning and development initiatives, and they try to map a lot of such things. They have an agenda to bring in innovation in the company. They want to build a better loyalty of their employees by providing better experience, but still they face challenges in their initiatives. According to you, where actually the companies are going wrong with their learning and development initiatives?
Thank you. I think that's a great question. So, a couple of kind of introduce a lot of very, the word experience you mentioned
Hmm.
is influenced a lot with design thinking itself. Earlier, we never used to talk about that, right? We used to talk about roles and responsibilities, the kind of work we're giving people. Now we're talking about the experience we're giving to people. It's a very human centered approach. And I'll come to COVID, what's happening because of COVID a little bit later, but wanted to start by citing a little bit of research. So, primarily in India, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's everywhere, but primarily in India, one of the top three employee value propositions, we call it EVP. So, what will help you attract talent from market, and what will help you retain talent in the organization? It's called employee value proposition. In India, consistently over the last many years, I've been tracking almost easily a decade. Learning and development and career progression are one of the top three. It's very interesting. Sometimes this junior workforce, millennials, we talk about them. They're not worried about working for big brands or big names or big
Hmm.
titles. Sometimes they're actually excited to work with startup because what they're looking for is exactly a learning progression and career progression. And that's one fundamental shift I wanted to mention. Therefore, it's very important we do that. Now, the second thing I wanted to say is generally, as organizations, we have our business priorities, client requests. So what's important to see is how are we able to bring those two together. So imagine a simple 2 by 2 matrix, a simple 2 by 2 quadrant, where you have on x-axis organization and individuals, on y-axis you have current and future needs. So basically, what we're saying is, as an organization, we have our current needs and future needs. The individuals who are employees have current and future needs.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we can find the sweet spot in the center, that's when we're addressing the whole experience bit. The second thing I would like to say is it's a very old concept. And when I say old, it's been around for almost 2 to 3 decades. There's this phrase you might have heard. It's a famous HBR article published in, I think, late 80s. It's called the War of Talent. And there's
Mm-hmm.
this huge debate. The debate is sometimes rhetorical, but the huge debate is the market employee driven or is the market employer driven? And we
Mm-hmm.
have our ups and downs. There's sometimes where employer rules the market and there's sometimes where employee rules the market. But the way we have been seeing shifts over the last decade or so, it's primarily an employee driven market.
Yes,
So I think the
agree.
fundamental shift from a mindset from organizations is first we need to believe that it's actually an employee market, not an employer market. The moment you believe it's an employee market, so you will start thinking about what experiences you have to give to them. So that's one fundamental shift we need to make. Now, coming to COVID, what's happening with COVID is, let's take this simple but very, again, it's prevalent in some industries, non-prevalent in others. But the whole work from home phenomenon. And one of my dear friends, he articulates it really well. He said, "There's so many challenges we were facing with COVID, but there was at least one thing which came out of COVID." He says, "When COVID hit us one evening in April or March of this year, we went to bed in 2020 and we woke up in 2023." And what he meant
Yes.
and what he meant by that was, from a digital transformation perspective, we have actually accelerated 3 years into the future and
Yes.
see the adoption. So, for example, very interesting statistics. So, the total number of users on MS Teams globally are larger than size of countries itself. The total
Mm-hmm.
number of users using Zoom is larger than population of United States. So we're
Ah,
talking about virtual communities and virtual living, right? So this huge fundamental shift that happened overnight. Now, if you take the example of the whole virtual working and work from home, there's again interesting research by one famous author. He says even after COVID recedes and things go back to normal, at least 35% of the workforce globally will continue working from home globally.
yes. Yes.
And then from a HR perspective, from a learning perspective, even from a business perspective or a typical manager perspective, it's easy when all of your employees are either in office, it's easy to manage. You have a model. It's if they're in home also, you have a model. Now we need to have a solution for a hybrid model where some come to office, some stay at home. And and then I'm giving that example because that is also going to drive employee market, right? So the very fact you ask employees to come to office might disengage them.
Hmm.
So, you need to be creative, flexible, and create those experiences again. Now, human interactions become experiences. Earlier we taken it for granted, right? Training programs primarily were like classroom trainings. Now probably a training program in the post-COVID world becomes a premium human interaction event. So again, we need to see how to create those experiences to
Hmm.
engage members. But the way, if I can summarize, it has always been an employee market, and digital transformation and events like COVID have accelerated in that direction. And the sooner organizations accept it, the sooner we'll be able to do what's good. And that's one of the big challenges I see organizations facing.
Yeah, you rightly pointed right that especially the digital transformation is changing a lot of things. Uh, in general conversations with the other leaders, many of them actually asking the similar set of questions that do you think that this working completely from home is going to be permanent or and I also come with this viewpoint, yes, that no employee actually wants to work completely from home, but maybe the companies will have to figure out a way in the middle where maybe we'll see down the line another world where companies will say, okay, you're not required to come to the office every day, maybe weekly once or twice is also fine, but they would be more okay with flexi working. I mean, wherever you work from, the more outcome oriented rather being in the office and doing your work. And I know that not for everyone it is possible to work from home because there are many industries where you have to be physically present. So that's fine. But yes, it's going to change. And financially also, it's like it's a more easier for the companies to adopt this model because it saves a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, think of huge organizations, the real estate space in a country like India, and especially place like Bangalore, where office commute is sponsored by the organization. Imagine the time saved. And again, yeah, again, it depends on the people, it depends on the organization, depends on the industry. Also, there are many factors which play in. But I think in a post-COVID world, many new models will emerge. Like there's already a famous experiment around 4 week day program, which is even experimented at Microsoft with some positive results. So
Hmm.
you're going to see a lot of interesting models coming up, and it's just a matter of picking what works well for us. And I think having an open mind is very important, because what worked well in a pre-COVID world might not work well during and after COVID. So yeah.
Hmm. Okay. 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 So let's now focus on learning and development. And
Sure.
since that's the theme of the topic, so according to you, how do you think that how much it is important that we focus on a better learning and development program for the better employee experience and their engagement?
No, it's very much. In fact, I started by saying employee value proposition learning is one of the top three things.
Hmm.
Now the idea is how do we do it right way?
Hmm.
Like I think of. I'll start with my own example.
Hmm.
I have accounts in practically every digital learning platform,
Hmm.
edX, Coursera, Udemy, many more podcasts and so many. But I'm staying digital learning platforms for a while. Personal accounts, Audible. Then as an organization, my organization and as all organizations, we provide so many platforms to employees. And sometimes what's interesting is even after that, most time spent by generally with by most people on learning or this informal learning either ends up in a YouTube or a WhatsApp or some newsletters. Now the question is we have all the resources, but how do we ensure we make it relevant for members from an organization perspective to bring them on board? So a couple of things I've learned with my experience, and it's been hit and trial, like an agile way, right? Iterate, experiment, and redo it, plan it, iterate. So what we have learned, and this started almost 5 years back when I was working with a financial major organization, which is one of the Fortune 500 companies. What we found was we moved from classroom training because this company had employees in 40 different countries, so therefore
Mm-hmm.
it was not easy to do classroom training. So we moved to a blended online learning format which could have components like do learning at your own pace. Then we will do series of webinars in between to engage you. And then initially when we first launched a program, it was 6 months long. And once we took the feedback, people said it was too long. Then
Hmm.
finally, after hit and trial, came up with this rule of thumb that around 20 hours of learning with in 3 months, 90 days, with 2 to 3 webinars thrown in, is a perfect blended learning sample. At least that's how it worked in that
Hmm.
organization. And end of the year, when we started measuring ROI, what we found very interestingly was these long duration blended programs were participating in these long duration blended programs. Their incomes were more, their attrition was so they were staying with the organization. They were learning more, they were performing better, and they were also staying longer with the organization. So that kind of cemented my approach of doing this blended long duration programs over last, for which span for 3 to 4 months. And then that's what I've been experimenting in different contexts, different industries. And now after COVID, you see most organizations doing that and it's working really well.
Learning and development has got multiple dimensions. When an employee actually joins an organization, yes, they are required to add value in the organization, yes, but when you rightly said, right, it's not basically the employer driven market, it's basically employee driven market. So every employee who actually join a company, they also want to see what is their career path, right, and how a company is basically helping them in growing their career, right. Definitely the L&D programs are one of such part where actually companies make an initiative to train their employees for the latest technologies available in the market and latest demand, right. But one thing that they are doing it wrong, which is my personal belief, is that it cannot be just like a spray and pepper, like in just having one LMS ready and dumping all the courses and thinking that the employees will come complete the courses on their own, okay, and believe that and they should come up with the new ideas for the organization. It cannot happen like this.
No, so true. And the reason I'm smiling is I'll go back to my earlier comment. As I said, personally, I have accounts in all the famous digital learning platforms out there. But if you go and see my progression there, it's not too great. So yeah, I've signed up for many things, but only few areas I complete. And that's the same thing with an average adult learner because the pedagogy of a school-going student is different to an adult learner. Adult
Yes.
learner needs knowledge, information, skill in the moment of the requirement, and they want that knowledge should be tied back to their earlier experience. So if it's not aligned to my earlier experience, the chances are that I'm going to deny it. And then
Ah.
I would like to see sequential progression of my journey. That's where you see a lot of gamification happening in learning these days. So I would like to see progression. So there's a bit of pedagogy right there which we need to take care. But again, going back to my earlier experience, I spoke about what I did at a financial major. Now I'm picking on that. What I found was it's important to move to learning paths than just
Ah.
learning courses. So rather than just, I'll give an example. So rather than just calling an employee and say, hey, here is a course on effective business, how to write better emails. And then there's another course called on conflict management. There's another course on making impactful presentations. Those are skill based, right? What if we package them and said, become an effective presenter in your current role and package all the courses together? So, and tied to their role, tied to the requirements of their role from a proficiency level, then it's an easy sell. So the idea is to move to learning paths, learning journeys. We use different phrases, and then also idea is to make it role based. For example, now taking the technology side of it, let's say I'm a manual tester, and obviously my aspiration is to be an automated tester. So what if somebody came to me and said, hey Anil, here is a learning path which will take you from manual tester to automated tester. Also, here is a learning path will take you on a DevOps track. Then I'll be more excited because it is very specific, it's very focused, and it's also aligns to my career aspirations. So what I've seen is moving to learning paths and role-based learning paths in a blended learning is the way forward. And clearly, the whole industry is focusing on, because of fourth industrial revolution, certain technologies. So AI, ML, blockchain, cybersecurity, IoT, AR, VR, and analytics is playing a big role. Automation is playing a big role. Depending on which organization you are, what type of clients you have, and what industry you serve, the mix would change. But primarily, these are 7, 8 technologies, and the idea is to get started on that journey, because it from a client perspective, it keeps you ahead so that you're ready when clients need it. And then from a member perspective, they are, it meets their ambitions and aspirations. And a quick comment I'll make from a client perspective, it's important we touch upon that too, because the way we as organizations respond is depends on how our clients are responding, right? And digital transformation is changing their business. For example, in what's happening in IT industry, and I've been in IT industry for 18 years, is earlier the turnaround time to give an RFP or a proposal for a bid or whatever used to be 1 month, 2 months, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, or longer. Now they actually want stuff in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, because they are also accelerating in an agile way. So agile is the way forward. So even from a methodology, not just what we do, people are moving to an agile way, and therefore we need to find shorter, life cycle, shorter, time cycle learning opportunities. We can't say, I can't go back to my business and say, give me 6 months, I'll keep somebody ready in this. The maximum I can say is give me 6 weeks, right? So, and that's where getting started ahead of time, even before the demand hits us, is a big need. And this is where I'll quote the research from World Economic Forum. It's available on free domain for everyone. The big shift between upskilling, which we have been doing for a long time, which is in a same technology, same role, an incremental learning, compared to reskilling, which is actually skilling them on the new areas, is to reskill an employee on a new technology. They estimate around 110 days of training. They say training, not just training, but training, practice, hands-on, and everything. So I only have maybe 200 days of working days for an employee, and 110 goes into reskilling, right? So I can't wake up tomorrow and say I want the reskilled workforce ready in 2 weeks or 3 months. It's actually a 2 to 3 year project. We need to start investing in reskilling almost 2 to 3 years ahead of time. And the companies which are doing it early are already seeing the benefits.
Right, right. Now you made a very valid point here. The things, the way the things are moving ahead. Okay, now let's now pick up your experience. Right, what was one one L&D program you led so far in your career? Maybe it could be from the CGI or the previous organization that you are very proud of, Anil. And what were your learnings from what you wanted to share, what you want to basically share with other leaders?
Thank you. So I'll actually pick two if it's okay with you.
No, of course,
because I've mentioned you're passionate about these two. So the same financial major I mentioned, I worked there between 2013 to 2017. And in 2017, we actually became #1 in the world in learning. So and I'm really proud about that moment. There are many awards and recognitions I've received, my operations have received, the companies I worked for. but this one has a very special place in my heart because we became number one in learning in the world.
Mm.
And the reason we could do it was, I'll tell you clearly lay out the problem statement and how we tackled it.
Yes, yes, yes.
So almost 60 to 70% of our workforce were millennials,
Mm.
and they were not happy with the way we were doing performance management, because performance management, it's not an end of year activity, right? It's a year long activity if you look at it,
That's
because
you're
it's
talking
about
about working performance or a learning performance activity.
working performance. Like typically companies have performance management system where you
Mm.
set goals for people and review the goals, give them the ratings and everything. So from a larger talent perspective, so that was a big feedback that they're not happy because millennials. And then what we did was we moved from an annual goal setting and performance management to a quarterly based goal setting,
Mm-hmm.
which again, from an IT organization or product development companies, they use of terms OKRs, objectives and key results, quarterly ones. So we made that huge fundamental shift, which meant changing the culture of the organization, getting our leaders ready to not just do it once a year, but set quarterly goals with team members. And along with quarterly goals, there were development goals every quarter.
Mm.
And in every quarter, there was also coaching conversation when I'm giving feedback to my team member on their last quarter performance. The focus was more on feed forward. So quickly close the loop on how the last quarter went, but focus more on what to do next one quarter. So it was more feed forward than feed backward. And then the other piece was making it a coaching conversation, and every quarter pick a development goal.
Mm.
So it was a huge initiative because we implemented it in 40 countries in 5 different languages, and learning and change management was a big part of the whole process when I was leading that piece. So and we made a significant shift. So just 2 quarters into the new implementation, the employee engagement, the percentage of members who are disengaged reduced by 8 to 9%.
No, that's a
People
big
started
number.
liking the approach.
That's
That's
a
a
big
big number.
number for an enterprise.
Very big number, yes. And that's a huge, it has huge implications because engagement has direct correlation to productivity and therefore to revenue and everything. So that was a problem statement and what we achieved. But doing that meant changing the mind shift of our leaders.
Yes.
So first we worked with our top 300 leaders to train them on what skills they need to do this new performance management. And after we trained our top 300 leaders, we did that for 6 months. And then we used the top 300 leaders to train the next 2000 managers.
Yes.
And then use the managers to train all members. So we did a cascading approach. And it's a very, and finally it culminated in the organization being number one in the world. But I'm really happy because it's not just training happening in isolation, training integrated it into a talent change, culture change, and eventually the whole business is run the organization.
Did you get a chance to actually take the feedback of the employees and better suggestions, and how have been their experiences so far when you change the model of taking the feedback quarterly?
Very much, very much. In fact, feedback was a big part of the overall process. So the way we started the initiative was we take feedbacks at various levels, but we also take feedback in Net Promoter Score, and we call it ENPS, Employee Net Promoter Score. So when we first took feedback on the performance management system, the legacy one, that Net Promoter Score was in negative. It was in minus.
Ah.
And then after 2 quarters, when we took Net Promoter Score again, it jumped into like in double digits in positive. So the shift was huge from negative to positive. So that's what we do as part of learning evaluation. We call it metrics and measurement for learning. There are 3 levels of feedback you take. One is called effectiveness, which is how effective is a learning or talent implementation. Second is how efficient it is. There's effectiveness measures, there are efficiency measures, then there are business outcomes. It's important to have all the three because some of the changes have lead indicators, some have lag indicators. So you're not going to see the change immediately today. Change is going to come in the future. So you need to have some lead indicators, like good feedback scores on a training or good feedback score on NPS tells me that in next 1 or 2 quarters it's going to actually have real business impact through attrition, performance increase in promotion or engagement scores. and you can find a correlation. So that's what we pretty much do in most of the major
Okay.
implementations.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so we did not cover the second one. You were talking about
Yeah, sure.
second one.
I'm excited about
Yeah.
second one.
Yeah.
It's in my current organization, and I'm really excited about
CGI.
this because yes, it's at CGI. It's around digital transformation.
Hmm.
So it's about creating this workforce for the future. And we started on the reskilling journey a couple of years back, but what we did over the last 12 to 15 months has been exciting because just as we started the whole conversation, we had learning platforms where we had reskilling topics, so on and so forth. But what we did was we started curating those learning paths, which we didn't do before. And then we had this idea saying, why don't we do a foundational program which brings everybody up to the same baseline? And we called it a digital awareness program. So it meant orientation on the 10 emerging technologies and two methodologies, Agile and DevOps, plus 10, the usual suspects like AI, ML, analytics, blockchain, IoT, AR, VR, and all those topics. And we said, let's do a program where we bring everybody up to a common baseline. Once they finish this program, they can choose the tracks and branch out after this. Choose an AI track or ML track skills, and we collaborated with various learning platforms and set up a 5-month learning program which has a learning duration of around 40 hours. And as we speak, thousands of our members have completed the program and are moving ahead in the learning journey. So that's what I'm really excited about. And for this specific program, the Net Promoter Score is again really high, around 30s, 32s, and thousands of our members are finished the foundation course. And what's interesting is most of it happened during COVID. So we designed the whole program, kept it ready, but we wanted to launch it in the month of April. That was the original plan. Then COVID happened, so we were in two minds. So much of effort went for so many months. People are distracted. They're settling down, working from home. We don't know if they'll do it or not. But then
Did
we
you
took
get
the
a
risk.
chance
We
to
launched the
actually?
program, and I think that's the best risk I would taken in my career. People have just taken on the learning and then completed it in huge. It's a huge phenomenon. So I'm really excited because, as I earlier mentioned, if you have to build your workforce, reskill your workforce for the future, it's a multi-year initiative. So for me, 2020 was a year of laying the foundation, and in 2021 and beyond, we could really accelerate, in further tracks. So this was a year of foundation, and I'm really excited because I've never done anything in this broad scale with thousands of members in 12 technologies in times like this, in times like COVID, and that's why it's something I'm really proud of.
So what do you think that this what prompted this high jump in Net Promoter Score for this initiative, which was not the case with the earlier programs, you think, uh, according to you? Sorry.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good question. So one is obviously it's a purely reskilling program, so it's completely aligned to the aspirations of our members.
Of the
They
members.
know that this is setting them up for working in the new technologies. I think the second one, this is again my speculation, is my just my opinion. Uh, in a COVID times where there's so many distractions we all have, right? I think learning is not just learning, as actually learning is a tool for employee engagement also.
Yes.
I feel this. Think of an average employee who takes and commute to office. When I drive to office, it takes at least 1 to 1.5 hour one way. So I've saved 3 hours of commute, and now the same 3 hours I'm working from home. Either I can stay distracted, or even assume I'm distracted. What if I took 1 hour out of those 3 hours, and just to stay away from distraction or even the stress of the work or stress of working from home, I just focused on learning. So I'm not just learning, but actually learning is engaging me, keeping me connected with the organization, and digital platform adoption has skyrocketed. Our adoption has gone really up to an extent. Our primary digital learning platform, from April till now, we had over 300,000 digital badges downloaded. So you can see how. So I think positioning learning not just for learning, but learning as a way of engagement is what shot up the NPS. Plus, obviously, the whole theme around reskilling because as an average employee, I'm keeping myself ready for the future. So yeah.
Mm. I mean, that's wonderful to hear. So what I get from these two use cases, that in this time, this COVID-19 situation, where many bigger organizations are trying to be more conservative in their investments, you took a bold step in convincing the stakeholders and decision makers that, hey, this is the time actually to invest in the talent for the future time. And you also try to understand the psychology of these employees, that what kind of skills they would prefer to learn, so that you map these skills with their career ambition and also the experience they are coming from, and then try to create those learning paths and programs and infuse it in your content with the mindset of creating better engagement and experience. So this is definitely, I would say, amazing to hear if somebody is actually putting that kind of thought. And then also, of course, if in case I'm not wrong, you must have used the technology to see how the engagement is going on, and how you can put the things in place so that you can improve further. So without that, it cannot happen. That's amazing to know. So if I have to ask you, whether you like, if you have to ensure, whether in the CGI or in general, when you take the programs for the employees, or before and after, how do you take, basically, how do you make sure that the expectations are met before and after? I think you have already answered this, but then I wanted to be more specific with these questions aligned, that okay, you're running a program, so before that and after that, how do you make sure that employees further stay connected with the program and then try to use that skill in actual?
That's true. I mean, that's a great question because that's one of the big challenges with with learning, because there's this famous there's this famous joke in marketing circles, I think, which can be applied in learning also. Then I'll finish with another one. So it says marketing guy goes to the CMO and says, we just finished a focus group. What we found was 50% of our marketing investment has gone waste, 50% made its impact. And that's the good news. And the boss asks, then what's the bad news? He says, the bad news is we don't know which is what.
And where it is coming from.
And where it is coming from. So same as with learning. We can do so much of invest in learning, but ROI, that's
Yes.
important. So some of things, again, in my experience, again, I'll tie it back to technology also. I think the moment you move to learning paths and role-based learning paths, then you're making the journey completely attuned to the learning. So it's not just knowledge focused.
Yeah.
It's not just skill focused. It's competency focused.
Hmm.
And what's happening now, what it means is from again various our partner, and internal and external partnerships. Practice labs are a big part of what we do. So every learning, technical training, from a technical training perspective, they actually get practice labs to do hands-on pieces. Then we use our internal Git platforms to post it, drive a community of practice where people give each other feedback. So that's a big one. And generally, from a general theme, ensuring your managers have coaching and mentoring skills are really important, because I can I can learn so much in classroom, digital or virtual, and come back, but I only get the opportunity to learn it on the job if my manager supports me. So manager as an accountability partner in learning, and creating that contract between manager and member through processes and tools is very critical. And also coaching skills from manager reinforces that.
Yes.
And different programs, we do it differently. For hardcore technical skills, we do a pre-assessment where we do knowledge plus skill assessment of coding, and we do a post-assessment after the training, again knowledge and coding. And sometimes we do it creatively by doing hackathons and so on and so forth. But you can actually see the delta shift between pre and post. That's what we do for technical trainings. For behavioral and leadership trainings, we use famous tools like 360. Very recently, we rolled out 360 feedback to all of our managers, and we do that once a year. So we actually know how much of manager competence has increased over the last 12 months. So there are different ways to do it, but you're right, as they say, begin with the end in mind.
Yes.
Always begin with what impact you're trying to make, and build the entire program around that metric. So since I started the response with the marketing joke, I'll end one with the learning one. And so this is a conversation between the CEO and the CLO, the Chief Learning Officer, and the CEO. And then the CLO goes to the CEO and says, "This is the budget I need for the organization for this year." So the CEO says, "What if I agree on all these budgets? You go and implement the program, but what if the employee take up all the learning and leave the organization?"
Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
common question and a
yeah,
fear
that's a
among
common
many
question.
many people. Yeah, many
Yes,
organizations, in fact.
yeah, that's what the CEO asks. Then the CLO says, "That's a valid possibility, but what if
They
we don't train them and they stay with the organization,
correct.
which is a bigger risk?"
Yes, yes,
So
absolutely true.
yeah, so I think I would end with that. But I think again from a larger context, another perspective I want to bring it is, we've been talking about how technology, especially fourth industrial revolution, is democratizing skills to an extent that now whoever is exceptionally good at these skills, now you know this better, you're an entrepreneur, so there's so many entrepreneurial hubs growing all over the world, like be it
Hmm.
Israel, be it Indonesia,
Yeah.
Philippines. Competition can come from anywhere. So, and
Yes.
for me, the emerging skills are a great equalizer from a democracy perspective. So anybody from anywhere in the world, like Malta, Philippines, Bangladesh, can just compete for a project. You are competing from here. So,
Yes.
and then if we don't keep that in mind, we might just lose the day. So from that perspective, active focus on reskilling, active focusing on, I would use the word meta skill, which is learning to learn, learning agility, building that curiosity in people would actually help our organizations, help the industry, and help the country also,
Hmm.
to stay ahead of the curve. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Okay. Okay. Anil, now one last question, and then maybe we'll conclude this podcast. Is that how do you actually identify the gaps in the learning and development programs, and then take the initiative to invest in the technology for improving the your programs? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you. It's an ongoing and multifaceted process.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I'll start from clients itself because we should always start from clients. So, in my current organization, CGI, just like all other organizations, we do a lot of customer interviews, both CEOs and CIOs, and we hear from them how they're seeing that industry landscape shifting, and most importantly, what are their plans on digital transformation for next 1 to 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And that helps us set our larger strategy
Mm-hmm.
of how can we help our clients get there, and that would drive our larger reskilling needs.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one very top down approach from a reskilling perspective,
Mm.
future perspective. And then we go to our managers and leaders and ask them a very near term perspective, saying in the current projects
Mm-hmm.
and the future pipeline of projects, what are the performance needs and what are the future pipeline needs.
Mm-hmm.
That gives us another view, which is more, let's say, 3 to 6 months, 3 to 9 months. That's the second way we get the inputs. The third piece we do is we actually go to members and
Mm.
say, what are your performance? What are your learning requirements based on your current performance? What are your aspirations? What is your upskilling need and reskilling need? And then obviously we put all this data together, apply a bit of analytics, look at the history for last 2 to 3 years, and then come up with learning strategies. Some of them are quarterly strategies, some are annual strategies, some are on demand. So it's a combination of many things, and therefore technology plays a big role. Like for example, when I had to roll out a training needs assessment for 1,000 managers and 15,000 members,
Mm-hmm.
obviously I need technology. I need highly customized tool which can kind of do the survey, which has multiple decision options, breakouts, branching, and then analytics side of data is also very important. So and then these days, looking at text sentiment analysis, there's thousands of fields of data. We have free text also coming from performance management, learning feedback. So we started doing some of those text sentiment analysis, and some very interesting results we're finding there. So technology is at the, I will kind of summarize it this way. Three fundamental shifts as a learning professional I've
Mm-hmm.
seen happening over the last 1 to 2 years and accelerating in last 6 months. First is shift from creating content to curating content.
Yeah.
There's already so much good content
So
out
much
there.
content is there.
Yeah,
Yes.
I don't have to create. I just have to curate it to the context and the right role. That's a big skill. And 90% of design I've done in last 1 year has been only curation. I haven't done any new stuff. That's one fundamental shift. The second fundamental shift is think as a learning technologist. How can LXP help you? How can LMS help you? How can analytics help you? How can data help you? That's the second piece. Think like a learning technologist even before they think about it, right? So try to automate, and it's kind of a joke, but one of the leaders who's my mentor says these words, and they're very interesting. So he says the best way to get more work done in which is on your plate is the two options, either delegate it or automate it. And he's so right?
Yes.
So if it's a high value work, delegate to one of your team members so that they can learn and grow.
Yes.
If it's not high value, it's business as usual, automate it. And I'm taking that very seriously because that's the best advice I ever got. Just like how in business side, we're doing RPA and automation. That's my second big takeaway. The third big takeaway personally for me as a learning professional is, the big fundamental shift from learning from experience through learning from others. I can't solve all the problems together. We are operating in what I call an unknown zone. It's not a known zone. So I don't have all the answers, and therefore I'm right here talking to you to learn from you. I'm in various forums talking from others, sharing my experience, learning from their experience. So actually thinking from a ecosystem perspective, which is beyond the boundaries of an organization. Those are my three fundamental shifts, at least for me, in last 1 to 2 years.
Wow. It was so interesting to talk to you. We covered a lot of things. We got your perspective about what you think that learning and development program can do for a better experience of your employees, and where the gaps are, what actually industry is not doing or doing it wrong. In fact, we also got to know about some of your previous initiatives and the work that you are very much proud about. And in between, you shared a lot of jokes, which we will also remember, right? We got to know about that. What is that your thinking is before rolling out the program, learning programs, and after you roll out the program, then how you try to think for the end goal so that ultimately the goals are achieved. And internally, what is your thinking behind taking the initiative for improving the outcome using technology? So I think it was a great conversation, Anil, and what I can say that it is definitely my pleasure that I had you on this show.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for inviting me.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to the Experience Business Podcast. In case you don't miss the subsequent episodes, please do subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast application. Or if you're watching us on the YouTube, then you can also subscribe to us on the YouTube channel. You can also visit us for the more updates on our website www.pritpo.com/podcasts. And if you're liking our podcast or have any feedback, please rate us, give your feedback on the Apple Podcast, or you can visit our YouTube channel, like us, and give the feedback over there.